the story of Joseph. From favorite son to a betrayed slave, from imprisoned outcast to a powerful leader, Joseph's life is a blueprint for overcoming adversity and finding purpose, even in the darkest of times. We return to the land of Canaan, focusing on Jacob, a patriarch blessed with 12 sons. Among them, one son stood out prominently, Joseph. Jacob favored Joseph because he was the first child of his beloved wife, Rachel, and was born to him in his old age. This favoritism was evident and created tension among the brothers, who perceived Joseph not only as the favorite child, but also as someone who reported their misbehavior to their father. On one occasion, Jacob gifted Joseph a splendid, colorful coat. Now, a simple garment might not seem like much, but in that time, that coat was a symbol of status, of favor, and of Jacob's intention to give Joseph a position of leadership in the family. Think of it like a CEO getting a corner office. That's how significant it was. Unsurprisingly, this favoritism didn't sit well with Joseph's brothers. Resentment and envy, like a seed planted in fertile ground, began to sprout. It was so bad that they couldn't interact with him without conflict and hostility. And if the coat wasn't enough, Joseph's dreams poured gasoline on the fire. Within 2 nights, Joseph relayed 2 dreams to his brothers. In the first, their sheaves of wheat bowed down to his. In the second, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down to him. The second dream was also told with his father present, and when Jacob heard it, he criticized it, saying, "What kind of dream is this? Do you believe that your mother, your brothers, and I will bow down to you?" However, even though Jacob said this, he pondered on its meaning. Now, dreams, especially in ancient times, were seen as pathetic, and Joseph's dreams were pretty much screaming, "I'm going to be in charge." This was the last straw. The brothers' simmering jealousy boiled over into a dangerous plan. They saw Joseph not as a brother, but as a threat to their own inheritance and status. One fateful day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers, who were tending their flocks. When they saw him coming, their resentment turned into action. They seized him, stripped him of his prized coat, and threw him into an empty well. While they ate, they ignored their little brother's cries for help. This was truly an evil that will haunt them for many years. Now, the well wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was a symbol of abandonment, of isolation, of being utterly alone. They initially planned to kill Joseph, but Reuben, one of the brothers, intervened, hoping to save him and bring him back to their father. But as fate would have it, while Reuben was away, a caravan of Ishmaelites merchants passed by. Judah, another brother, suggested selling Joseph into slavery. For a measly 20 pieces of silver, they sold their own flesh and blood. Can you imagine the betrayal? The despair Joseph must have felt. Sold into slavery, stripped of his identity, and carried away to a foreign land. Joseph was taken to Egypt and sold to Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. But even in this new and hostile environment, God was with Joseph. And through his relationship with God, his character shone bright. Joseph was diligent, honest, resourceful, and with God's help, he succeeded in everything he did in his master's home. He quickly gained Potiphar's trust and was put in charge of his entire household. For a moment, it seemed like things were looking up, but Potiphar's wife noticed how handsome Joseph was and repeatedly tried to seduce him into her bed. But Joseph refused, saying, "Look, my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. It would be a great sin against God. So no, I will not." One day, she set him up by making sure all the household servants were away. And when he came into work, she grabbed him, demanding him to sleep with her. But Joseph ran out of that house, and she falsely accused Joseph of attempted assault. This accusation was punishable by death. Potiphar was angry, but not in the way you think he would have been, because Potiphar knew his wife and knew her accusations were false. But because she caused a huge scene after Joseph ran away from her, he had to save face. So he did what he thought would be best. Despite Joseph's innocence, he had him thrown into prison. Yet even in prison, Joseph refused to be defined by his circumstances. God was with him. And just like when he served Potiphar, God made him successful even in prison. Joseph was once again put in charge, but this time over all the prisoners. It was here, in this unlikely place, that Joseph's ability to interpret dreams resurfaced. Time passed, and two of Pharaoh's royal servants, his cupbearer and his baker, had angered him, and he sent them into prison. Now, some scholars believe the reasoning for their imprisonment was because of a murder plot, perhaps by poisoning, and they were the prime suspects. Now, this was a God-ordained moment, because one of these men will play a big role in Joseph's life. After Potiphar, the captain of the guard, put them under Joseph's care, they remained in his care for some time. One night, both of them had a dream that troubled them. When Joseph saw them the next morning and saw that they had worried expressions on their faces, he asked them, "Why do you look so worried today?" They told him they both had dreams they couldn't understand, and that they had no one to explain to them what their dreams meant. Joseph told them that only God can understand and interpret dreams, and that with God's help, he could explain it to them accurately. He foretold that in 3 days, that the cupbearer would be restored to his position, and that the baker would be executed. It happened exactly as Joseph predicted. The cupbearer was restored to his position, and the baker was hanged. Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him and mention him to Pharaoh to help him get released from prison, for he was innocent. But he forgot all about Joseph. 2 long years passed of waiting, but God was still with him. He was still working in Joseph's life, preparing him for the next role of greatness, a blessing in the future. Then one night, Pharaoh had 2 disturbing dreams that baffled all his wise men. In the first, 7 healthy cows was devoured by 7 gaunt and ugly cows. In the second, 7 full heads of grain was swallowed up by 7 thin and scorched heads of grain. What could these dreams possibly mean? Finally, the cupbearer remembered Joseph. He told Pharaoh about the Hebrew prisoner who could interpret dreams. Pharaoh desperate for answers, immediately summoned Joseph from the depths of his prison cell. Joseph was quickly cleaned up, shaved, and presented before Pharaoh. Pharaoh told Joseph how he heard that he could interpret dreams. Joseph answered, I cannot, but God can explain the dream for you. So Pharaoh recounted his dreams, and Joseph told him without hesitation, declared that they foretold of 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of famine. But Joseph didn't just offer a prediction, he offered a solution. He proposed that Pharaoh choose a wise, intelligent man to collect and store grain during the years of plenty, so that Egypt could survive the coming famine. Pharaoh was astounded by Joseph's wisdom and insight. In a stunning turn of events, Pharaoh appointed Joseph as his second in command, essentially making him the prime minister of Egypt, and gave him a wife named Asana. Joseph, at the age of 30, went from prisoner to powerhouse. For 7 years, he diligently oversaw the collection and storage of grain. He established a system of efficient distribution and prepared Egypt for the upcoming famine, as well as giving Pharaoh 10% of the grain in Egypt. When the famine struck, it was devastating, but Egypt, thanks to Joseph's foresight, was prepared. People from surrounding countries, including Joseph's own brothers, journeyed to Egypt to buy grain, though hesitant at first, because they knew 20 years earlier Joseph was most likely sold into slavery there, and their hearts carried guilt over it. And then Joseph's brothers, unaware that they were standing before the brother they had betrayed, bowed down to him, fulfilling his childhood dreams. Joseph recognized this instantly. Joseph concealed his identity. He acted like a stranger and was rude and treated them roughly. Also, he used an interpreter when he spoke with them. This was not out of spite. Joseph was guided by the Holy Spirit to test his brothers in this way for the correction and restoration of the brothers in the near future. Joseph accused them of being spies and demanded that they bring their younger brother Benjamin, who was Joseph's only full brother, to Egypt. But before they could return home, he threw them in prison for 3 days. Joseph didn't want his brothers to fear him. He wanted them to trust him. So after 3 days, Joseph said to them, I am a God-fearing man. Do this, and I will let you live. If you are honest men, one of your brothers can stay here in prison, and the others can go and carry grain back to your people. But then you must bring your youngest brother back here to me. Then I will know that you are telling the truth, and you will not have to die. The brothers agreed to this. Joseph kept Simeon in Egypt, and he told his servants to fill his other brothers' bags with their money and grain, and he sent them home. When the brothers returned to Canaan, they returned with heavy hearts, relaying the news to their father, Jacob. Jacob, already grieving from Joseph, was devastated at the thought of losing Benjamin. They were also surprised when their money was returned to their sacks. This made them very afraid about going back to Egypt and facing this confusing governor. Eventually, the famine forced them to return to Egypt with Benjamin. Joseph, overcome with emotion upon seeing Benjamin, released Simeon from prison. He invited his brothers to a feast at his home, giving his brother Benjamin 5 times more than the others. This was another test to see how they would react to the youngest brother's favoritism, to see if the resentment was still there or if there was really a change of heart. This was a show of love and kindness that they didn't deserve towards his brothers without them even knowing who he really was. However, Joseph had one more test up his sleeve. The next morning, when the brothers were preparing to return home, Joseph instructed his servants to fill each sack with grain, placing their money on top. Additionally, he ordered that his special silver cup be placed inside the youngest brother's sack. After leaving the city, Joseph instructed his servants to stop his brothers and accuse them of wrongdoing by claiming they had stolen his special cup. He added that the individual found with the cup would become his slave. When the servants caught up to the brothers, they conveyed Joseph's message and began searching each sack from oldest to youngest. Upon discovering the cup in Benjamin's possession, the remaining brothers were deeply saddened and returned to the city. Once they were in Joseph's presence, they bowed before him, and Joseph was hard on them. And once the brothers pled their case, begging for Joseph not to take Benjamin, but to instead take them, Joseph saw that they had changed. And finally, he couldn't bear it any longer. He told everyone to get out, and he revealed,
I am your brother Joseph.
They were terrified, overwhelmed with guilt and remorse. But Joseph, in a moment of profound grace, forgave them. He understood that their actions, while terrible, had ultimately been a part of a larger plan. Joseph brought his entire family to Egypt, reuniting with his father Jacob after decades of separation. The family was whole again. Joseph used his power not for revenge, but for reconciliation and restoration. Joseph's tale is a remarkable reminder that no matter what trials or tribulations come our way, the Lord is always with his people. God's plan is to draw, teach, and strengthen us, not only in his word, but most importantly to himself, so we can be a light to a dark world just like Joseph. Thank you for joining me in retelling this remarkable story today. If you found Joseph's story inspiring, please like this video, subscribe for more uplifting content, and share your thoughts in the comments below.